you said that you don't bother correcting your husband, and that set the internet ablaze. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so I don't correct my husband because I feel like most women, if they do correct their husband, it's in a very disrespectful way. I feel like there's a respectful way to bring things up that might concern me without correcting you or like mothering you or being the authority in the home. So like, let's say my husband's doing something that I don't agree with. I might ask questions about it. I wouldn't go into why did you do this? Or, I wouldn't raise up and be all of that. Again, I feel like that steps into me trying to be the head. So I would just ask questions about it. We'd have a discussion about it. I'd let him know what my thoughts are, and I would let him still lead. And, I do some praying over here and let God do the rest of the convicting. I plant some seeds, let God finish that in time. Let my husband learn at his pace, but I continue to plant seeds. And I feel like that's still a submissive way of, I wouldn't say correcting, just a submissive way of like being a helper.
It sounds like you're coming from a standpoint that you're not assuming that whatever he did was incorrect. It seems like you're seeking out if it was correct or not. You just don't assume. Is that accurate or what?
That's a good point. No, for that's me. If I genuinely feel like he was doing something wrong or it didn't line up with God's word, that's how I would approach that. If I feel like I don't know whether it was right or wrong, then I would still just have a question-based discussion. It wouldn't be an intention behind me trying to like plant this seed that God will water later. It'd just be me genuinely asking him as my leader, like, I wonder about this. What do you think about that?
And you said as your leader, so you believe that in the roles of marriage, you believe in that, like husband have a role, wife have a role, and they come together. Is that what you believe?
Well, definitely. Marriage was designed by God, so that's the order that he designed. He gave Adam this purpose and this mission, this assignment, and he gave Eve to Adam as a helper, like exclusively to help him. And the role was already set. So why would I want to step outside of that role? If I feel like when marriages do step outside of that role and the wife becomes the leader, or maybe they're both leaders, it's setting itself up for failure because that's not how it was designed.
And you said also that you pray for him. If you don't know if something was accurately done or your husband did something the right way, you pray for him instead of just automatically going to him and just chewing him out, essentially. Right. So can you just give us a little bit about what you would say in that prayer?
So it would more so be, God, please convict. If I really feel like he's doing something wrong, it's not like we're disagreeing with something. If I feel like he's doing something wrong, I would go to God, ask for God to convict him, show him, guide him, lead him, tug on his heart to bring him back to you. Like maybe, a husband stepped away from God, which anytime someone does that, they start doing things that are not of God. So I would include that in my prayer, draw him back to you. And then of course I would be praying for forgiveness on his behalf as well. But just for the most part, letting him be in that, but me still being like a supportive help without being like his guidance and stepping outside of my role to lead him.
So you're not being his quote unquote corrector, but you're being still his helper, and you're being in that submissive role, and you're doing that by going to God. If he's not listening or don't feel like you can have that conversation, you go to God. Is that what you're saying?
Right, because I cannot control him, but I know someone who can.
So, okay, last question I think I have for you is, there are a lot of women who feel like, well, if he's not being the leader that I want him to be, or the best possible leader, I think in my mind, then why should I submit to that type of leader?
Right, I hear that a lot. When we're talking about submission, we're exclusively talking about marriage, not relationships, right? So let's clarify that. So if we're talking about marriage and submission in marriage, like the command is already there for wives to submit to their husbands. the command is already there for husbands to love their wives as Christ loved the church, and you're supposed to lead their wives and stuff like that. And it doesn't show like a contingency, like if your husband is leading, then you submit, or if the wife is submitting, then the husband leads. No, it's just husband lead and love, wife submit and help. So if the contingency is not in the Bible, then why would I base my role off of what my husband's doing? That sounds conditional. And my love for my husband is not conditional. You know, how I serve my husband is not based on what he did or didn't do for me that day. That's not love. So I want to make sure that I'm doing right by God and I'm staying in my role regardless of what he's doing. And in turn, he will see me walking in my role and probably want to step up in his role. Like, oh man, my wife's made me dinner still, even though I didn't do this or whatever for her. He'll see that. And that can be a good example for him. Not that you're leading in doing that, but you're being a helper in walking the way that you're supposed to.
All right, and just as a bonus question for our subscribers only, did you struggle with that in the beginning of your marriage? Because you've been married, you said, going on 11 years now?
11 years.
11 years now you've been married. Did you struggle with that whole role aspect and correcting husband, any of that stuff in the beginning of your marriage?
I mean, I wasn't the wife that I was today. I did struggle a little bit with like respect, or not a little bit. I struggled a lot with respect. And so the correcting part or the helping when he's doing something wrong, I wasn't going about it the right way. So I was coming, disrespectful, or I would post something on Facebook that was vague, but you could tell that it was about my husband, that kind of thing. So I was doing none of the correct stuff as far as that.
And are those Facebook posts still available that we can go back and see?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Thank you.